every act of genius comes from ignorance. We may think that we need to know and understand much deeper the fundamental principles, and only then we will be able to uh, deliver something that nobody has thought about. But that is not true. When we don't know exact rules and all the architecture of the thought process that is required to understand a particular research field or particular concept and that we want to explore, then we become the slave of interactions of different rules observed by many people. So we become the slave of the thought process of our predecessors. But when we don't know, we don't understand that it is impossible to do. So we just get it done. We take the principles outside the box, just like the Gödel said, and we try to build that architecture of thought in a particular research field or particular concept that we or particular technology that we want to develop. And that is where the act of genius comes. As we grow old, we become compromised with the rules. We know that this cannot happen because he saw it, that cannot happen because he experienced it, this cannot happen because in his life that was there. So we become an architecture of compromisation, and that compromisation enables us to think within the domain, within the line. We get trapped into a box. And act of genius comes from when we have rules of a very different domain. We bring it here, and then the existing architecture of thought process breaks apart, falls apart, and cannot survive. That's why stupidity, ignorance, and knowing very, very less about a research field, knowing only a few concepts that could be there, enables us to do marvelous things. That's why you will find that most of the act of genius happens from the age of 18 to 30, 32, 33, 34. Above 33, 34, you will not find that anybody has contributed significantly. Last 100 years, all the Nobel laureates, if you look at when they did the work for which they got the Nobel Prize much later, actually happened within 30s. Even when I see my work, research work, I find that almost all the works that I did in my 30s, early 30s, and until now. And what I have been doing is finding different threads to make it simple, to understand what did I do. For an example, when in 2008, when a paper was published on memristor, I knew memristor is the biggest historical hoax. And I could easily write, now I won't, but I could write to the Nature editor that humanity's biggest hoax is memristor, the fourth circuit element. Memristor can never be fourth circuit element because it's a sandwich structure between two metals. It is a simple device that is known to electronic industry and humanity for the last 50, 60 years. Obshinsky switch came 1964, published in Science, and then this work is absolute garbage. So you take current voltage characteristics and you claim that I store the charge and I get the magnetic flux. You never do it. So what happens is that I invented an inductor, a helical storage device, and I have been working since 2008. If you think of, I created PCMS, PAMAM, controller, sensor, and motors. So all these components together and a singular supramolecular system. I consider that as an act of genius. I could not have done at this time because nobody ever thought in the world that so many different molecular components could be brought together when quantum property, it's a quantum device because it's a single molecule. But this quantum device could do wonderful things that other people could never thought of. So the motors will be all around. So when I send it to my body, even a Paracetamol takes, upregulates 700 proteins in your body, or downregulates 600 proteins. But this one only 2 to 3 or 4. It's very selective. 1 or 2 protein, and then done, and kills the cancer cell. So if you go through our neuromorphic computer, I came in 2008, 2009, just when I was just about to understand how to it was just 3 years after my PhD, and I was very strong that everybody in the world was doing absolute garbage and dishonest about understanding the human brain. And I started building from the scratch. If you see, I was playing with different components in the brain, and pages after pages I was drawing the brain, and I came up with a completely different model of the human brain by 2010. By 2010, I understood by 2008, I understood that nobody wants to go beyond Turing machine, and Turing machine is the way when you linearize or sequentialize, you can never get it. But the problem for me was, if Turing machine is not the way, if the philosophy that every single information in the universe can be written on a single line, if it is not the right way, then what would be that? And then I came up with a fractal therapy tool. It took nearly 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years to publish that. Membrane is responsible for human cognition and consciousness. I didn't absolutely like it. So neuromorphic computer, quantum information processing, I never liked the theory of quantum. The reason was very simple, because quantum mechanics was just fitting observation with a functional group, with a clock. You never ever, nobody in the world try to build the fundamental principles of quantum mechanics, try to derive these properties from something much more elementary and fundamental. So if I go back, and then we came up that the architecture of time is important. Nobody is trying to find architecture of time. So even the fundamental sensors has to be redefined. If I redefine the fundamental sensors, how I am capturing information from the whole world, then I have to say that every single bits and pieces of science that has been developed in the last 500 years is fundamentally wrong. We are fitting the observations. That's why equations seems to us as a nature's truth, but they are not. When we will start observing at a single time, at a single instant, multiple coexisting times and their architectures, then the real science will begin. But I could not say it, because if I say, people would say, he talks absolute garbage, absolute nonsense, non-scientific, and this kind of statement will come. So I think that the biggest problem that happens in understanding or developing science is that nobody is ready to accept or to become a true scientist. Everybody wants to be popular, to be famous, and easiest way to become famous is when the whole world is saying this is a big problem. You go there and you try to solve it, and when the whole world says this, you change it a little bit and you show that this is part of that one, so that common people, common scientists, below average scientists can find some meat. You get higher citations because their thought process is very low, so that they evaluate you and then they think that they can replicate your work. So that's why average, minimality, and non-creative methodical roots control us. And the act of stupidity, act of nonsensical thought process, where you concentrate fully on something which was never thought about is always dishonored, ignored, and that's why it takes 30 years, 40 years, 50 years for a particular thought to come up. That's why we always say stupids who are coming from completely different domain should be welcomed.